Saudi Arabia just accepted Israel's historic peace offer, and this is the most shocking diplomatic breakthrough the Middle East has seen in generations. We're not talking about vague normalization or symbolic gestures. This is full diplomatic recognition, economic integration, security cooperation, and potentially even a formal defense alliance between the Arab world's most powerful nation and the Jewish state. The agreement includes provisions that nobody thought possible: Saudi Arabia opening an embassy in Jerusalem, Israel supporting Saudi nuclear energy programs, and both countries coordinating military operations against Iran. Tehran is calling this the ultimate betrayal and threatening massive retaliation. The Palestinians feel abandoned by their longtime Arab champion. What happens next could either usher in an unprecedented era of Middle Eastern stability and prosperity, or trigger the regional war that has been building for decades as Iran and its proxies respond with everything they have. Before we break down exactly what Saudi Arabia and Israel agreed to, and why this reshapes everything about Middle Eastern geopolitics, smash that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. This deal is already triggering responses across the region, and you need to understand the forces that will determine whether this brings peace or war. Let me give you the specific details of what Saudi Arabia and Israel have agreed to, because the scope is absolutely extraordinary. Saudi Arabia will establish full diplomatic relations with Israel, including opening embassies in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. This represents Saudi recognition of Israel as a legitimate state with a right to exist, something Saudi Arabia has denied for 75 years. Saudi and Israeli diplomats will work together in international forums, coordinate on regional issues, and engage in regular high-level consultations. Economic integration is comprehensive and immediate. Direct flights will connect Riyadh, Jeddah, and other Saudi cities to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Trade barriers will be eliminated, allowing Saudi and Israeli businesses to operate freely in each other's markets. Israeli technology companies will partner with Saudi firms on projects ranging from agriculture to cybersecurity to artificial intelligence. Saudi oil could potentially flow to Israel, while Israeli natural gas might supply Saudi needs. The agreement includes massive investment commitments. Saudi sovereign wealth funds will invest tens of billions of dollars in Israeli technology sector, infrastructure, and energy projects. Israeli companies will participate in Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 development plans, building smart cities, renewable energy facilities, and advanced manufacturing. The economic integration will create interdependencies that make future conflict economically catastrophic for both sides. Security cooperation is the most sensitive and strategically significant element. Saudi Arabia and Israel will share intelligence on Iranian activities, terrorist threats, and regional security challenges. Military-to-military dialogues will establish communication channels and potentially coordinate operations. There are even provisions for joint military exercises and cooperation on missile defense systems to counter Iranian ballistic missile threats. The agreement addresses Saudi nuclear ambitions. Israel will not oppose Saudi development of civilian nuclear energy program, including uranium enrichment for power generation, provided Saudi Arabia maintains transparency and adheres to non-proliferation commitments. This is extraordinary because Israel has historically opposed any Middle Eastern country developing nuclear capabilities, seeing them as potential threats. On the Palestinian issue, the agreement includes Saudi commitments to support a two-state solution through diplomatic and economic means, but Saudi Arabia is no longer making Palestinian statehood a precondition for relations with Israel. Israel commits to not annexing additional West Bank territory and to supporting improved economic conditions for Palestinians, but there's no requirement for immediate resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The United States played a crucial mediating role and provides security guarantees to both parties. America commits to supporting Saudi security with advanced weapons systems and potential defense treaty. America also reaffirms commitment to Israeli security and provides both countries with enhanced intelligence sharing and military cooperation. American involvement makes this a trilateral strategic alignment against Iran. Now let's discuss why Saudi Arabia made this historic decision that contradicts decades of policy and risks enormous regional backlash. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the kingdom's de facto ruler, has concluded that Saudi interests are better served by alliance with Israel and the United States against Iran than by continued hostility toward Israel in solidarity with Palestinians. Saudi Arabia views Iran as the primary existential threat. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have attacked Saudi territory with missiles and drones. Iranian influence in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon threatens Saudi interests. Iranian nuclear program could give Tehran capabilities threatening Saudi security. Saudi leadership concluded that confronting Iran requires powerful allies, and Israel is the most capable military power in the region, with intelligence and technological capabilities Saudi Arabia cannot match. Economic motivations are also critical. Saudi Arabia is attempting to diversify its economy beyond oil dependence through Vision 2030. Israeli technology, innovation, and entrepreneurial culture offer exactly what Saudi Arabia needs for economic transformation. Israeli water technology could help Saudi Arabia address severe water scarcity. Israeli agricultural innovations could improve Saudi food security. Israeli cybersecurity and AI capabilities could accelerate Saudi digital transformation. Crown Prince MBS also sees this as establishing himself as transformational leader who fundamentally reshaped the Middle East. He wants to be remembered as the visionary who brought peace and prosperity to the region, not as another leader perpetuating old conflicts that serve no Saudi interests. Making peace with Israel is a bold move that elevates MBS's status globally. Generational change in Saudi society also enables this shift. Younger Saudis are less invested in the Palestinian cause and more focused on economic opportunities and quality of life. They want jobs, entertainment, and modern lifestyles more than they want confrontation with Israel over issues that don't directly affect them. MBS is responding to this generational shift. Saudi Arabia also assessed that Palestinian leadership has been ineffective and that waiting for Israeli-Palestinian resolution before pursuing Saudi interests is pointless. Palestinians are divided between Fatah and Hamas. Palestinian leadership is corrupt and uncompromising. Saudi officials concluded that Palestinian cause, while sympathetic, cannot be allowed to hold Saudi Arabia hostage indefinitely. The calculation about American politics also factored in. Saudi Arabia needs American security guarantees and advanced weapons. Normalizing with Israel dramatically improves Saudi Arabia's position in Washington, where pro-Israel lobbies are powerful and influential. By making peace with Israel, Saudi Arabia gains stronger American support and reduces congressional opposition to arms sales and security cooperation. From Israel's perspective, this agreement represents the ultimate validation of Israel's strategy of building relations with Arab states regardless of Palestinian situation. Israel has pursued normalization with Gulf states for years, arguing that shared interests against Iran and economic opportunities matter more than the Palestinian issue. Saudi acceptance of this framework vindicates Israeli approach. Israeli security is dramatically enhanced by Saudi normalization. Having the most powerful Arab state recognize Israel's legitimacy and cooperate on security undermines remaining Arab opposition to Israel. Iranian threats are countered more effectively through Israeli-Saudi coordination. Israeli strategic depth increases with Saudi Arabia as partner rather than adversary. Economically, Saudi Arabia offers Israeli companies access to a massive market and gateway to the broader Arab world. Israeli technology firms can expand throughout the Middle East. Israeli natural gas could supply energy-hungry Saudi economy. Israeli innovations can be deployed solving Saudi challenges, generating profits while also building relationships. Politically, Israeli leadership can claim historic achievement, bringing peace with the Arab world's most significant power. This strengthens the government domestically and elevates Israel's international standing. Israel becomes a normal country with regional relationships rather than a pariah state surrounded by enemies. However, the Palestinian issue creates significant complications and moral questions. By normalizing with Israel without securing Palestinian statehood, Saudi Arabia is effectively abandoning the Palestinians. This could be portrayed as betrayal of Arab and Islamic solidarity. Palestinian leaders are furious and feel their cause has been sold out. Iran's reaction has been explosive and threatening in ways that suggest genuine preparation for major responses. Iranian officials immediately condemned the Saudi-Israeli agreement as betrayal of Islam, abandonment of Palestinians, and submission to American imperialism. Iran's supreme leader called it a historic crime that will be punished by Allah and by the forces of resistance. Iranian military forces have been positioned for potential operations. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen are on alert. Iran might conduct attacks on Saudi or Israeli targets through proxies, creating deniability while inflicting punishment. Iranian cyber capabilities could be used against Saudi and Israeli infrastructure, financial systems, and government networks. Iran is particularly concerned about strategic encirclement. With Saudi Arabia and Israel allied, plus American military presence throughout the region, Iran faces coordinated opposition from the most powerful forces in the Middle East. Iranian access to the Arab world is restricted. Iranian influence is actively countered. Iran's nuclear program faces united opposition. Iranian nuclear decisions might be accelerated. If Iran believes it faces existential threats from Israeli-Saudi American alliance, Iran might conclude that only nuclear weapons can guarantee Iranian security. The agreement might paradoxically push Iran toward developing nuclear weapons as deterrent against conventional military superiority of its adversaries. Iran could also dramatically escalate support for proxies. Hezbollah in Lebanon possesses an enormous missile arsenal capable of devastating Israeli cities. Houthis in Yemen can strike Saudi oil facilities. Iraqi militias can attack American forces and interests. Iran has options for making both Saudi Arabia and Israel pay severe costs for this alignment. The Palestinian reaction reveals a sense of betrayal and abandonment. Palestinian leadership issued statements condemning Saudi Arabia for prioritizing Saudi interests over Palestinian rights. Palestinian protests erupted, expressing anger at Arab states they feel have sold them out. Palestinian society feels isolated and hopeless if even Saudi Arabia will not maintain solidarity. However, Palestinian leaders also recognize they have limited leverage. Saudi Arabia will provide economic support to Palestinians as part of the agreement, potentially improving Palestinian living conditions even without statehood. Palestinians may have to accept that they won't get everything they want, and that compromises are necessary. Hezbollah, the Lebanese Shiite militia backed by Iran, represents one of the most dangerous potential threats. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah gave a fiery speech condemning the agreement and hinting at violent response. Hezbollah possesses over 100,000 missiles capable of striking Israel. If Hezbollah decides to retaliate, it could trigger devastating war. Israeli military is preparing for potential Hezbollah escalation. Israel has reinforced northern defenses, increased intelligence collection, and warned that any Hezbollah attacks will trigger massive Israeli retaliation against both Hezbollah and Lebanese state infrastructure. Israel is making clear that attacks will be met with overwhelming force. The risk of miscalculation is high. Hezbollah might conduct limited attacks to demonstrate opposition without triggering full war. But Israel might respond disproportionately to deter future attacks. Escalation dynamics could spiral into major conflict that neither side actually wanted but cannot control once started. Yemen's Houthi rebels, backed by Iran, have already launched attacks on Saudi Arabia and could intensify operations. Houthis have struck Saudi oil facilities, airports, and cities with missiles and drones. Saudi Arabia has been fighting Houthis for years without decisive success. The Israeli agreement gives Houthis additional motivation to attack. Iraq's Iranian-backed militias could target American forces in Iraq as retaliation against the American role in facilitating the agreement. Attacks on American troops could force American responses that escalate into broader conflict. Iran can inflict costs on America indirectly through proxies while maintaining some deniability. Syria, where Iranian forces operate, could become another venue for retaliation. Iranian forces might launch missiles at Israel from Syrian territory. Israel would respond with airstrikes on Iranian positions in Syria, potentially triggering broader conflict between Israel and Iran's regional network. The United States is positioned as guarantor and beneficiary of this agreement. American officials are celebrating this as major diplomatic achievement, demonstrating American leadership. The United States gains from having key Middle Eastern partners aligned against Iran, reducing American need for massive military presence while maintaining regional influence through partners. However, the United States also assumes significant obligations. If Saudi Arabia or Israel is attacked in retaliation for this agreement, American credibility requires supporting them. American forces could be pulled into regional conflict defending partners from Iranian responses. American security commitments to both countries create entanglement risks. American domestic politics will debate this agreement intensely. Some will praise historic peace achievement. Others will criticize abandoning Palestinians and creating conditions for regional war. Congressional approval might be required for certain security commitments, creating political battles. European countries are cautiously welcoming the agreement while expressing concerns about Palestinian rights. European officials emphasize that Israeli-Palestinian conflict still needs resolution and that normalization with Saudi Arabia does not solve underlying injustices. European approach is supporting peace while not abandoning Palestinian cause. Russia sees this as American-led realignment that undermines Russian influence in the Middle East. Russia has relationships with Iran, Syria, and other actors that oppose this Saudi-Israeli-American alignment. Russia might provide support to Iranian responses, not because Russia wants war, but because undermining American initiatives serves Russian interests. China has major economic interests in both Saudi Arabia and Iran. China buys oil from both countries and has invested heavily throughout the region. Chinese officials are calling for peaceful coexistence while avoiding taking positions that would alienate any party. China wants stability that protects Chinese economic interests. Regional countries are making calculations about whether to follow Saudi Arabia's lead or maintain current policies. The United Arab Emirates and Bahrain have already normalized with Israel and will deepen cooperation. Morocco and Sudan have established relations and might expand them. But countries like Qatar, Kuwait, and Oman are more cautious. Egypt, which made peace with Israel decades ago, views Saudi normalization as validating Egyptian approach. Egyptian officials welcome reduced isolation of their own Israeli relationship and see opportunities for Egyptian economy to benefit from regional integration. Jordan is concerned because Jordanian stability depends partly on managing Palestinian issue carefully. Large portions of Jordan's population are of Palestinian origin. If Saudi Arabia abandons Palestinians, Jordan faces domestic pressure and potential instability. Jordanian government must balance relationships carefully. Turkey under President Erdogan has positioned itself as defender of Palestinians and critic of Israeli policies. Turkish officials condemn the Saudi-Israeli agreement as betrayal. However, Turkey also has pragmatic interests in maintaining relationships with Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States. Turkish response will likely be rhetorical rather than substantive. So what actually happens next? The immediate focus is implementation of the agreement while managing security threats. Saudi and Israeli officials will begin establishing embassies and diplomatic presence. Business delegations will travel between countries. Security coordination will intensify to counter Iranian responses. Iranian retaliation is likely, but the form remains uncertain. Iran might conduct cyber attacks that disrupt systems without causing casualties. Iran might orchestrate proxy attacks in ways that demonstrate capability while avoiding triggering full war. Iran will want to punish this alignment without suffering devastating retaliation that Iran cannot afford. Escalation management will be critical. Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States will need to respond to Iranian provocations firmly enough to deter further attacks, but not so aggressively that regional war erupts. Finding this balance is extraordinarily difficult in practice. Within 6 months, the agreement's durability will be tested. Either implementation proceeds and economic benefits materialize, validating the decision, or attacks and complications undermine support. Saudi domestic reaction will be important. If Saudi public accepts normalization, it stabilizes. If significant opposition emerges, pressure to reverse course could build. Within a year, the regional order will have fundamentally shifted. If the agreement holds, the Middle East will be divided between an Israeli-Saudi American axis and an Iranian-led resistance axis. Conflicts will be understood through this framework. Countries will choose sides or attempt neutrality. Within 5 years, this could either be remembered as the beginning of Middle Eastern peace and prosperity, or as the agreement that triggered the war that devastated the region. The outcome depends on leadership decisions, Iranian responses, Palestinian developments, and countless other factors that cannot be predicted with certainty. What's absolutely clear is that Saudi Arabia accepting Israel's peace offer represents a historic inflection point. The old Middle East order based on Arab-Israeli conflict is ending. A new order based on Sunni Arab-Israeli alignment against Iran is emerging. Whether this new order brings peace or war remains to be determined. If you've stayed with me through this entire analysis, you understand we're witnessing potentially the most significant Middle Eastern diplomatic development since the Camp David Accords. The implications will unfold over years and decades. Share this video immediately with everyone interested in Middle Eastern politics and international relations. This story will define the region for generations. You now have comprehensive understanding of what's at stake. Hit that like button. Tell me in the comments what you think happens next. Will Iran retaliate violently? Will this bring lasting peace or trigger war? Did Saudi Arabia make the right decision? What about the Palestinians? I want your perspective. Subscribe with notifications on because this situation will develop in major ways. As implementation proceeds, as Iran responds, as the region adjusts to new realities, we'll analyze every development. The Middle East is being fundamentally reshaped, and you need to stay informed on one of the most consequential diplomatic breakthroughs in modern history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.